Hey guys, in this tutorial, I'm going to cover the dialogue system module of NodeCanvas. So I have this scene set up, kind of like an adventure game, where I can walk around this nav mesh. I can click on characters, and you see as I hover over the character, they get a little speech bubble. And when I click it, I'll walk to them. And right now, I'm not going to do any dialogue, but what we're going to do is we're going to use NodeCanvas to set up a really engaging adventure game scenario where we can interact with multiple characters, we can interact with objects, and we can basically dictate the flow of our entire scenario just using the dialogue system. So I have some basic scripts set up already just to handle walking around the nav mesh and also to handle clicking on characters. I have this click to talk script here that I've made, and all that does is if I click on this character, it's going to tell the player to walk towards this character and then play a dialogue, which we have not currently set up. So in our example scenario, the basic idea is that we have this mage character over here who's in this jail cell, and that jail cell is guarded by this guard here. And as the main player, we're going to try to break our friend the mage out, and the rogue here is going to help us with that. So we're going to need to be able to talk to all three of these characters, as well as interact with some important props, such as this door and these keys. So the first thing that we need to do is add the dialogue UI to the scene. Now, you can implement your own UI, but in this case, we're just going to use the one that comes with NodeCanvas. So I search for the @ dialogue UGUI and drag that into the scene. And as you can see, I now have a UGUI dialogue element here. Just for the sake of the tutorial, so that we can see the dialog box a bit better, I'm going to add a canvas scaler and set it to be 2 times bigger, just so we can see clearly in the video. Now, very importantly, you do need to have an input module in your scene. So I already have one because I was using it for handling, hovering over and clicking these characters to pathfind to them. But if you don't have one, you can just create a new game object, search for input module, and in this case, we're going to use a standalone input module, and that's going to allow us to interact with our dialogue, UI element. If you don't have one of these in the scene, you won't be able to select choices or press to proceed the dialogue. All right, so let's set up a dialogue between the player and this character here, the rogue. So the idea is that I'm going to click her, the main player is going to walk towards her, then a dialogue is going to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the rogue, and on her game object, I'm going to add a dialogue tree controller. So it has already created a bound graph within the game object, so this is saved in the scene, and I can click this button here, edit dialogue tree, and that's going to open up my dialogue tree graph. To add a node, I can simply press spacebar or right click, and I can see all the nodes available to me. So I'm going to add a say node. This is our most basic dialogue node. This will make the selected dialogue actor talk. So when I click the node, I can see the inspector of it here, and I can change this dialogue text. So I'll change it to something the rogue is going to say. So the rogue is going to say, there must be a way to rescue your mage friend. Try looking around. So I can just drag out, create another say, and add try looking around. Like that. And I'm just going to assign my dialogue tree controller to my click to talk component. And before we play, I'm just going to quickly show you what click to talk does. So the click to talk component that I made for this tutorial implements the iPointerEnter handler, iPointerExit handler, and the iPointerClick handler. When the component is enabled, I'm subscribing to dialogtree.onDialogStarted and onDialogFinished. And that's going to allow me to disable or re-enable certain behaviors. So for example here, onDialogStarted is going to change my cursor to the default cursor, and when it's finished, it's going to set it back to the speech cursor if I'm hovering over someone still. Now here, the implementation of the onPointerEnter is going to check dialogtree.currentDialog is not equal to null. If this is not equal to null, it means a dialogue is currently playing, and therefore we don't want to process any of this logic. And I do the same thing in the onPointerClick. So when I click, if I have a current dialogue, it's just going to ignore this behavior completely. Now when I do click, and there is no dialogue, then what it's going to do is it's going to find a talk to clicked character handler, and that's going to be on my player. And it's going to pass through the dialog tree controller that we assigned here with some other options. So let's have a quick look at the talk to clicked character handler. So from here, we pass through that dialog tree controller, that goes into here, we construct some data and we set the path. And then in our update, when we reach that path, then we're going to start the dialog. And it's as simple as calling start dialog on the dialog tree controller. Now you can see here, I actually have a version where it passes through a dialog actor and one where it doesn't. And I'm going to cover dialog actors very shortly. But for now, it's just going to run this one here, where it's just going to start the dialog with no instigator. So I'm going to click the rogue, walk to her, and there we go. We get a nice typewriter effect, and she says that dialogue. And you see this name here is actually coming from the game object. And if I change that, go to the next line, you can see the change in the game object name changed this. The dialogue finishes, and I can walk around again. Now, what we really want to be able to do is have multiple characters in the conversation. So if I were to add another say node and say, okay, I'll look around. And I want the player to say this, not the rogue. But right now, I cannot actually control that. So to solve this, we're going to add a dialog actor component to all of our characters. So I'm going to choose my characters, add component, dialog actor, and you can see here, it's automatically taken the name of the game object and placed that in there, which is fine. But we can also rename it, so we could call this the jail guard instead. And now that name is what's going to appear in the name field when we talk to this character. Additionally, we can assign portraits. So let's assign portraits to all of our characters, our player, our jail guard, our rogue, and finally, our mage. We can also modify the color of their dialogue text. So let's say we want the player only to have a special text color. So he's going to have this blue color, and everyone else is going to talk with this white color. So now, in order to have multiple actors in the same conversation, we're going to have to add actor parameters. Now, self is going to be replaced by the actor starting the dialogue, which in this case is the player. So when I click the rogue is going to tell the player to handle its interaction, and then the player is going to start that conversation between them with the player as the instigator. So player is self, which means that here, the player will be saying these lines. But we want the rogue to say these two lines and the player to say this line. So I'll add an actor parameter to my dialog tree controller, name it rogue, and then I can just drag that dialog actor into that swatch there. And now, when I click this node, look in the inspector, and click the speaker dropdown, I have access to the rogue. So I will set the rogue for these two here like that. And self, I will keep the same because this is always going to be the player. There we go. So the rogue appeared with the correct portrait, the correct name, and the white text. And now the player's talking, and the player has, again, the right portrait, the right name, and the blue tint that we had decided on for his dialogue lines. So there are a couple of settings on the dialogue GUI, and I'm going to turn on skip on input. So that means that I don't have to wait for it to finish coming in. I can just click and it will instantly skip past that. But I'm going to keep wait for input on. If you turn wait for input off, then it will not wait for the player input to proceed, and it will just naturally continue. And that's useful if you have voiced lines and you don't really want the player to have to click through every time. Now for the next example, I'm going to add a dialog tree controller to this door here. So when I click the door, I want the player to try to open it, and if it's locked, he's going to say something like, it's locked. So again, all I need to do is add the dialog tree controller, edit it, and I have a fresh dialog tree here. And you can see if I click this button here, I can navigate through the different dialog tree controllers in the scene. So I can bounce back to the rogue or go to the door. So here we're going to use our next node, the task action. So again, spacebar, add the task action. And remember, self in this case is going to be the player. So we don't need to add any actor parameter for the player. We already have it here. And these actions are going to execute on that dialog actor's game object. So I'm going to click the node. I'm going to assign action task. I'm going to choose animator, play animation, and choose interact. So I already have a state in my animator called interact, which is just plays an interact animation. And I want my transition time to be pretty quick, so I'll just put it on 0.1. So here, something to be aware of is that this self is actually referring to the dialogue actor that has been assigned here. So for example, right now this is the player, but let's add the guard as another actor. So we write in guard and we drag him in like that. I'm going to create another task action, and this time I'm going to choose the guard, animator, play animation, annoyed, and that's going to happen instantly. And so this self here is referring to the guard. It's going to look for that animator on the guard and play that annoyed state. Whereas this is the instigator of the graph self, and this is going to use whatever that was assigned to. In this case, it's going to be the player. I can also add multiple action tasks within the same node. So here, if I click assign action task again, and this time let's play some audio, you see it actually adds it into this list. And I can click each of these to access the parameters. So in this case, play audio null. So we want to actually play a locked sound. Now, if you look at this, we have this little option here now that we have multiple, which is actions run in sequence or actions run in parallel. So what's going to happen right now is if I tick wait until finish on that animation, is it's going to play that animation, then it's going to play the sound at the end. However, I don't want it to do that. I want it to rather play the sound and play the animation at the same time. So I can change it to be actions run in parallel. That means the interact is going to start, the sound is going to play, then, because this is wait until finish, when the animation finishes, then it's going to go to the next node where the guard is going to do the annoyed animation. And we can also add in here directly a say. So we don't need another node all the time. We can actually add it as an action task. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some text here. Don't mess with that door. Then after that say is finished, I'm going to add another animator, play animation, sit. So he's going to sit back down in his chair. And because these run in sequence rather than parallel, he's going to do that animation. Now, this does not wait until finish, so the hey, don't mess with that door is going to play at the same time. Then, after I have finished that dialogue, then he's going to play that sit. So here we go. We have our guard keeping an eye on us. I click the door. And there we go. So it played the animation, played the audio, then the guard did this kind of annoyed animation, set his dialogue, and when I finish that dialogue, he sits back down, just like that. So now let's have a look at adding conditions to our dialogue tree. So I'm going to press space, I'm going to choose branch, and I'm going to add a task condition. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make use of the blackboard. So I'm going to add a variable here to the graph, just a Boolean, has been interacted with. And now I can go into here, I can check my condition task, and if I search for bool, check Boolean, and I can just choose that variable from here, has been interacted with, and that assigns it nicely in there. All right, and I'm going to put this underneath here. So I'm going to delete that connection, connect that into there. So after the player does the interact, then if it has been interacted with, we'll drag that out. Otherwise, so if the door has not been interacted with, he's going to say the mage must be on the other side of this door. Too bad it's locked. But if he has already interacted with it, he can just say it's still locked. And then we're going to connect those right back into the guard sequence like that. And while we're here, we don't really like that he just says it's still locked every time. We want a bit of variety. And so to do that, we can use the probability selector. So add the probability selector here, and that's going to choose a random child. So let's make some copies of this dialogue here. So we have it's still locked, it won't budge, and I wonder how I can get this open. And what I'll do is I'll just grab this and connect it into here instead, then drag out from our probability selector into each of these variations. And what you can see is it actually generates a percentage chance here. So it will visually show you the percentage chance that each option has of being selected. And I can adjust that weight by clicking the connector here. and let's say I move this up to 2. Now you see this is 50%, and the other two are 25% each. I can also adjust it by clicking Self and changing like this, and it's all dynamic and adjusts very nicely. If I wanted to, I could also assign a condition task here, and that could exclude this from being selected on certain conditions. We're not going to do it in this case, but it is a nice tool that you can use. Okay, so now we need to connect these into our guard node here. So he's going to say one of these randomly, and the guard is going to tell him to stop messing around. And we have to remember also to set our has been interacted with Boolean at the end so that that gets turned on. So let's just drag out another task action here, set bool, choose our has been interacted with, set it to true. So let's keep an eye on the graph. So we're going to look at the Boolean here, as well as which selection it's going to choose. So I click the door. Now this failed, which means that it was the first time interacting. Has been interacted with is off, so it goes into here. The mage must be on the other side of this door. Too bad it's locked. Hey, don't mess with that door. Now that's been turned on, so next time I interact with that door, it goes down this branch instead, and in this case it says it's still locked. I'll click it again, and now it's chosen it won't budge. And I've set something up similar for the keys, so just using the same logic that we use for the door. So he's going to react to me if I try to mess around with the door or try to take his keys. Now what I want to do is I want to ask the rogue to help me, but she's not going to help me until I've figured out that there's a door that needs to be unlocked and that there's some keys that are guarded by a guard. So she needs to know the context of what's going on. What we can do is we can make use of a global blackboard. So I'm going to create a new game object, and I'm going to add a global blackboard, and I'm going to change the identifier to be game state, and I'm going to add a couple of variables. So I'm going to add a Boolean for has interacted with door, and another one for has interacted with keys. And those are going to start off false. So remember, we already have this variable here, has interacted with door, inside our actual door graph. But what we want to do is we want to elevate it to be a global variable. So here inside my door dialog tree, I'm going to change this variable here to be game state has interacted with door. And down here as well where I set it, I'm just going to change that variable to be the game state has interacted with door. And since we don't need this anymore, I'm going to delete that variable. And everything looks fine. I've connected it to the global variable instead. And I've just done the same for the key dialog tree, setting has interacted with keys to true. So now that we have those variables in the global scope, I can make use of a multiple task condition branch. So we want her to say something different whether you have interacted with the key and the door, just the key, or just the door, or if you haven't interacted with anything at all. So we're going to create 4 different say nodes coming out of here. So this one here can be the last one. So let's connect that there. So if you haven't seen the keys or the door, then she's just going to tell you to look around. Now this is going to go from left to right and choose the first one that passes the conditions. So I'm going to click that node there, and I'm going to assign a condition task. And this is going to check a bool. So we'll just look for check Boolean, and we're going to look in our game state global blackboard has interacted with door, and we're going to assign another one, or I'm going to copy and then just paste it like that, and then I can just change this to be the other variable. And all true required, yes. So if we have interacted with both of these, then we're going to say some dialogue here. And these ones I'm going to paste again. This one is going to be if you have interacted with only the door, and this one if you have only interacted with the keys. And so what it's going to do is it's going to go here. If one of these is false, then it's going to go down here, figure out which one is true, do that. And if none of them are true, then it's just going to go straight to our starting dialogue here. So what's going to happen now is if we have interacted with the door and the keys, and then we go back and talk to the rogue, she's going to come up with a plan to distract the guard. And the plan is going to be that you're going to yell out a phrase, a secret sign, and when she hears that, then she's going to do something to distract the guard. But we want the player to choose what the secret sign is going to be. And so what we can do is we can make use of the multiple choice branch node here. So I'm just going to connect that in there, and you see you can add the choices directly into here. So I'll add 3 choices. The first one is going to be blueberries, the second one is going to be turkey, and the last one is going to be troll in the dungeon. And what I want to do is when the player chooses these, I want to set a new variable. It's going to be the secret sign. So let's make some task actions. And we're going to assign a set string action. So set variable string. We're going to choose game state, and we're going to create a new variable here. And this is going to be blueberries, copy, paste, and paste again. And then just change these texts. So this is turkey, and this is going to be troll in the dungeon. So I want to make sure that I rename that variable, because right now the automatic one is just called value A. So I'm going to grab my game state blackboard and change that to be the secret sign. And I'm going to default that at none, just like that. And you see that updated these automatically. So we have a couple of options here. So we can tick say selection, and that will mean that the player, because the player is self, is going to actually say a dialogue line after you've selected it. And you can also make it timeout. So you can make the choice timeout after 3 seconds or so if you wanted to add more of an urgency to the choice. All right, and I've just added a final line from the rogue. Now, one great thing that we can actually do is we can refer to a variable inside the text. So here I can do game state slash, so that's the name of the blackboard, secret sign, square brackets. So after setting that variable, she's going to actually use that variable in her line. All right, so I have my global blackboard docked here so we can easily debug what these values are. I'm going to talk to the rogue. So these failed because we have not interacted with the door or the keys yet, and we haven't set a secret sign. So she's going to do that dialogue. Then I'm going to interact with the door. Now that gets turned on, and if I talk to her now, it has chosen this branch instead. She's referring to the locked door that we've interacted with and giving us a hint that we should look for a key. And she will keep doing that whenever I talk to her while I'm in this state. So now I'm going to try to grab the keys. The guard's not happy about that. Now, both of these are on. So when I talk to her, she goes down this branch instead. Now she's going to ask us to set the secret signal. And we're going to choose blueberries. Our player says it because we have it marked on here to say the selection. And there she confirms the secret signal is blueberries, and she's reading from that variable there. So I've just added these 2 new variables to my global game state blackboard, guard left room and player has key. So I've set up the guard dialog tree using all the concepts that we've gone through already. So here, if he's already left the room and you talk to him, he's going to say something different. If you have interacted with the door, or because we have any true suffice, then he's going to say, I'm watching you, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to have a chance to say a secret code. And if not, then he's just going to ask you, what do you want, and tell you not to go touching anything. Now here, when we get the choice for the secret code, what we can actually do is add the condition tasks to here. So we're going to check string, game state, secret sign, and we're going to invert that condition there, none. And we're going to copy that for all of these. And you see it actually shows up here. So if we haven't set a secret sign, then he's just going to say, yes, sir. Otherwise, you get a choice to say a secret sign. And then down here, we're actually checking if the sign that you chose is the sign that you had set with the rogue. And if it's true, then he's going to run out of the room and he's going to set his state left room to true. Now, for more complicated dialogues that reuse a lot of the same dialogue branches, so for example, if we had another place over here where this wants to get called, then what we can use is the jump control here. And you see here, I can just lead these into our jump Then I could put this block somewhere else, and then I need to connect this to here. And the way we connect it, you see here, is actually we add a tag. So let's say distraction. Then here, guard distraction. And you see this little line is going to lead to there to show that that's where this jump is going to go. Now again, in this case, we don't really need it, but just for demonstration purposes, that's how you use it. I've also set up the key dialog so that if the guard has left the room, then we're actually just going to pick up the key. So we're going to set that global blackboard value, player has key, to true. We're going to deactivate the actual object, play some audio and play some animation. And since it's deactivated, we won't be able to interact with it again. And for the door, if the player has the key, then we're going to play our interact animation as usual, but we're not going to play the locked door audio. Instead, we're going to play the door open audio, and we're going to rotate the door visual so that it opens, and then disable the click to talk component on door, because once it's open, we don't really need to click on it anymore. And finally, the dialogue that happens when we click the mage. So the player's just going to say a little bit of something, nothing too crazy. So before we see the final result, let's actually assign an audio file to each of our dialogues. And this is going to bring our characters more to life. So for every say node that we have an audio file, and we can just assign that to whatever audio clip you have. So in this case, I've just used some AI to generate some voice lines. The dialogue module also comes with a localization system. So you can change the text or the audio depending on the player's language. To do this, just click this flag up here to open the localization editor. So for example, let's add some Japanese translations. So I choose Japanese here. There are no Japanese localizations. So I will click append language, and that's going to generate all these entries for me, where I can override the text and the audio. Alright, so I've added some Japanese translated text and an accompanying audio file where the voice line is in Japanese instead of our default language, English. In order to change the language in-game, all you need to do is find the dialogue UGUI object in this scene, then find the language drop down here, and then change it to your desired language. So for example, let's change it to Japanese.
友達を助ける方法がきっとあるはずだ。周りをよく探してみてくれ。
わかった。探してみるよ。
And change it back to default.
There must be a way to rescue your mage friend. Try looking around.
And finally, in order to add additional languages or change the languages, all you need to do is edit this locales script. So I've opened the file and I'm just going to add Korean at the end there. And now back in the dialog tree, open the localization editor, choose Korean, and now I can add Korean to my dialogue. Alright, so now that we have everything set up, let's have a look at how our little adventure game example works.
No can do. No can do. The way seems to be blocked.
There must be a way to rescue your mage friend. Try looking around.
Okay, I'll look around. The mage must be on the other side of this door. Too bad it's locked.
Hey, don't mess with that door!
I wonder how I could get this open.
You better not be trying to lockpick that.
A locked door. Too bad I ran out of lockpicks. You'll have to find the key.
Oi! Trying to nab me keys, are you? Thought I wouldn't notice. I'm literally right here. I'm watching you. No funny business. Got it?
Yes, sir. It's still locked.
Stop fiddling with that.
So you found a way to get to your friend? Maybe I can distract the guard. I'll keep an ear out for the secret signal. What should the secret signal be?
Troll in the dungeon.
Okay, got it.
I'm watching you. No funny business. Got it?
Troll in the dungeon.
What are you yabbering about?
Help! I'm being attacked.
Huh? Intruders?
What are you waiting for? I distracted him. Now go save your friend.
Where'd he go?
He seems quite comfortable. Does he even need rescuing?
So by just using the dialogue system module of NodeCanvas, we were actually able to do a lot of great stuff. We were able to make the world very interactive, have a lot of branching dialogues, have global states shared among different dialogues, all very cleanly and very easy to set up. So hopefully this tutorial taught you some of the tools that you can use in the dialogue system module of NodeCanvas, and hopefully you can apply it to your game to make even more compelling narratives and interactive adventures.